Hi, I am Taylor with Interconnect Mortgage, and I am happy to be here with my friend Frank. Hi, I am Toni Taylor with Interconnect Mortgage, and I am happy to be here with my friend Frank Rekas. And we are going to talk about some insurance issues this morning. And Frank is a financial planner. He does insurance products, etc. We're having a great conversation about insurance needs. Frank, give us a little intro on yourself, if you would.
So thanks, Tony, for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic, although a lot of people probably aren't excited to hear about it, but it's one of those necessary evils, right? So I am a financial planner, as you mentioned, but I also do investment planning, wealth management, as well as insurance or risk management protection for people, which is a big part of their overall financial plan that most people either haven't addressed or need to revisit.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question. So, and obviously, there's several different kinds of insurance that, there's life, there's long-term care, there's health insurance, there's all these different things. When we get into life insurance, at what age would you tell people, like, listen, you should be getting your life insurance stat? Like, when is it too soon? When is the optimal time? And when is it like, you might have missed the boat?
That's a long-winded answer, so I'm going to
Yeah.
try and give it the best way I can. You
Okay.
start working, you're young, you're healthy, you're making good money. Even if you just get term insurance, as much as you can qualify for, get it because you never know when the day comes that you won't qualify to have it. So,
Yeah.
are you too young for insurance at 25? No, you're not too young at 30, and you're definitely not too young at 35 because life changes, things happen.
Yeah.
So get it when you can afford it and get it when you're healthy.
Yeah, I think something I was always taught was that if you can actually get it coming into your late teens, early 20s, that because you're your youngest, theoretically, you're at the healthiest point that you are, so you could get the
Right.
highest amount of coverage at the lowest premiums. Most people
Exactly.
aren't thinking about insurance at that point because maybe they feel like, look, there's nobody for me to benefit. Nobody in my life. I'm not married, I don't have a family, I don't have liabilities and things like that. But that is an opportunity for them to basically capitalize on getting the best coverages at the lowest
Hmm.
cost at
Hmm.
that age. And then certainly I know when I became a parent, that was like, okay, it's stop, drop, and roll because God forbid something happened to one of us. We wanted to make sure that the other person would be able to handle the financial, the
Yep.
lack of the other income to be able to get the
Right.
kids raised. So those are just kind of two examples of things that, can trigger that insurance need. And I think more and more, you just shared a story, somebody that's very young that found out that they need a kidney transplant. How
Yeah.
old,
A
can you
40,
share how old that person was?
yeah, 46-year-old male that needed a kidney transplant. I don't know the details of this. It's related to a business associate of mine, but I don't know if they have insurance, if they don't have insurance, and GoFundMe is not a
Yeah,
insurance plan, and it
no,
really bothers me when I see people unfortunately have to do that. And like you and I were talking before we got on, you're one doctor visit away from being uninsurable. And I'm
yeah,
not here to try to scare people. It's just fact. And I have a very good friend who I've known for many, many years, went to the doctor for their annual physical. And after the doctor came in and read, the charts and looked at everything on a follow-up meeting, said, in 6 weeks, we're doing open heart surgery. You're 80% clogged in your arteries, and had no clue that that was a problem. So you may not think you have anybody to leave money to when you're 25 or 30, but eventually you will, and you don't want to wait until you can't either afford it or until you can't get it to actually purchase it.
yeah, and something that I wanted to bring up because I don't know, I had my mom is very holistic and she was always about like let's do everything we can to prevent and keep ourselves healthy and but I also think that society is increasingly taking measures to do have that a more vibrant life and to maintain
Right.
their health and youthful appearances and things like that. And one of the things that I have a lot of friends doing is they're doing a lot of testing on themselves. They may or may not have insurances. It's not a conversation I've had with them, but they're doing a lot of testing that if they did those tests at some point in time, right, they could affect again their insurability and their premiums. So,
Right.
what is something that people should, again, I guess, going back to the younger, get it before you have any health issues, but you have to kind of be careful about how much screening you do on yourself as a precautionary, because you don't want that to affect an insurance
Hmm.
if that insurance wasn't going to underwrite or look at those things.
Yeah, and one thing to look at really is family history. So in my family, the men unfortunately die of heart attacks. On one side of the family, it's relatively young, 55, 68, 67 years old. So I'm always making sure that I'm in good shape. Knock on wood, I am not on any medication, have no problems. But it's taking good care of yourself and maintaining your health. Everything in moderation. I'm not saying you got to be an absolute perfect human being and avoid certain things, but you have to be careful. But sometimes somebody shows up at the doctor's office and you have a condition that just came out of no place. So
Yeah.
it's important to stay healthy, do healthy things, exercise, eat well, because you never know what's going to happen. And most of the things that happen to people, there's no warning sign. It just all of a sudden you have it, and then you do become uninsurable from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, again, it's one of those things we hope we never have to use it, but there's nothing more tragic than reading the story. In social media, we see this stuff far too often, right? Where somebody is very young and has been left with a family because somebody else, unfortunately, whether it was an accident or an illness or God forbid something else, now they've left behind these people that have no idea how they're going to financially manage life. And it's bad enough to have to deal with the emotional trauma and the loss. It's another thing to now
Mhm.
have the financial pressure, and you don't even have time to grieve and take care of the people around you that are also suffering, because you have this, we've got to figure out how we're going to put food on the table and keep the roof over our heads fear
Yeah,
immediately. It is something that have the conversations, right? Like, have
right,
open the dialogues. Nothing one side, we all agree, nothing is one size fits all, but
right.
it is something that should be part of your planning. And you should absolutely be having these conversations. Don't wait for something to go wrong, and then think you can go get it, because going backwards is not going to end well for you.
No, and two things I want to mention is number one, I've done the research. Everybody dies at some point. We
Yeah.
just don't know when, right? But it's true, it happens. But if a lot of problems stem from um, a couple, and there's only one person that's the breadwinner. The other spouse is home with the children, raising the kids, keeping the house together. You need to make sure that that person is insured, because if something happens to the breadwinner or to that person, now all the responsibility is on the breadwinner. And
Yeah.
not only do they have to go out and make money and keep the roof over everybody's head and groceries on the table, but who takes care of the kids?
Well, I want to go a little bit wider on that one, because the other piece of this is if you're in a business partnership with somebody,
Oh,
you want to look at key coverage for each other, because if, what would be the impact of the business and your financial livelihood if your partner were to be, unfortunately, something happened and they passed, or yourself, right? What would happen in
yep.
reverse? So that's something that I don't think a lot of business owners take into consideration, is that piece of it, right? So it's
Yep.
not just your immediate family members, but sometimes, you're running a company and you're employing people. It's not even just your partner and their family, but it's
Hmm.
potentially many, many other people that there's a ripple effect on.
Oh, absolutely. I was talking to a mutual colleague that you and I have months ago, and he was telling me about a business where one of the partners passed away. There was an agreement, but there was no insurance inside of that agreement. And now the widow is fighting for some form of compensation. And they've been battling this out in court for, I don't know, I think it's 2 or 3 years. So
Yeah.
definitely something that needs to be addressed. Handshake deals, they don't
No.
work in the end. It's just
Yeah,
not a good
it's
thing.
funny. That's another conversation, but I'm like, partnership
Yeah,
agreements. If you're in business, partnership agreements are really critical.
right.
But yeah, no, Frank,
Exactly.
I appreciate it. Hopefully we're helping people think about something that they hadn't thought about. And, if you're at a point where you don't have insurance, I would, again, Frank, what's the best number to reach you
Sure. 954-253-5508.
and your website?
www.palm, like palm tree, wealthpartners.com.
Awesome. Well, Frank, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. And, again, I hope that if you're watching this, that if you this is something, give Frank a call. He's a great resource. He and I both share the
Thank you.
same mindset that we should be making collaborative decisions, helping you make collaborative decisions with all the financial peers in your life. And so he would be a great resource for you to talk to about these topics and other financial planning and wealth management. So thank you so
Great.
much, Frank, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.